Hi, this is Christina Singh, and I'm launching the Right News channel. So I've decided to launch this news channel because I believe in truth and in investigative journalism, and I believe in doing the right research and to present facts as they are accurately and without bias. So the first piece of news that I'm going to report on was a virtual healthcare conference that was held between Pfizer Inc. and Barclays. It was held on the 11th of March 2021, and it was done as part of investor relations. So representing Barclays Research was senior analyst Carter Gould. Representing Pfizer Inc. was CFO and executive VP for global supply Frank Diamello, and Charles Traino, the SVP of Investor Relations with Pfizer. So, what I'm going to report on is based on a transcript of the event, and I'm going to be reading parts of it actually verbatim. So, you will know that this is not based on voodoo or non fact. So the first bit of the transcript talks about the results of Pfizer, understandably, as this is for the shareholders that are represented by Barclays Research. Frank Diamello stated that the company did very solid results in 2020, and it was up 8%, excluding consumer, and for the fourth quarter was up 11%. So by all accounts, that was fantastic results. And for 2020, Pfizer generated a whopping 14.5 billion in operating cash flow, or 42 billion for the innovative part of the company. That's 42 billion. Its guidance for 2021 includes its 15 billion revenues from COVID vaccines and was growing operationally at 41%. That's stupendous results. Interestingly, Diamello said that without its COVID revenues and P&L, the rest of its business was going at just 6%. With it, it was growing at 41%. And he described the growth as having a nice operational rhythm. I think it would be fair to say it was more than just an operational rhythm. I would say it was going at a gallop. But I digress. Let's move on. So, in terms of the efficiency of its manufacturing rollout of the vaccines, Diamello made the following observations. It has been amazingly effective and efficient. So, it was due to have delivered on 100 million doses of the vaccine to the US government by the end of March. It has now delivered 120 million. That's 20 million more than the initial promise. It was due to deliver 200 million by the end of July. It has now been able to, they are predicting that they are able to do that by the end of May and instead be able to deliver 300 million doses by the end of July. And they are expecting to even accelerate that further. And how have they been able to achieve such amazing results? Well, Diamello made a couple of observations. Number one, it has doubled the yield in its batch runs of its specialist syringes by a factor not just of 2, but by 4, so 4 times more. It has expanded its existing manufacturing lines and it's added new suppliers. And, very important point to note, for those of you who are considering taking the vaccines, they have added on new contract manufacturers. And that should actually ring alarm bells, because if you were expecting that the vaccines was going to come from Pfizer Inc. with its clean room facilities and its pedigree, you may be wrong, because these new contract manufacturers, he doesn't actually elaborate or expand on this to say who they are and where they come from. So it could just be any OEM manufacturer of vaccines, could be from China, could be from I don't know where else they actually manufacture vaccines, but your guess is as good as mine. And moving on, he talks about the emerging variants of the virus. And he goes on to say that, and I'm quoting here, upbeat, that in terms of the protection that's provided by our vaccines, there is no evidence that would suggest that there's a loss of protection in terms of the protection that's provided by our vaccines. So I view that is obviously a good thing. So, which means that even with variants of the virus, Pfizer believes that their current vaccines are able to protect all of us from those variants. And in fact, they are evaluating a third dose of their vaccines, a booster, because, of course, we have to understand the durability of immunity and the efficacy against these emerging variants of the virus. So, guess what, folks? It's not just one shot, it is a booster on top of that, plus there might be another one. So, three shots in all, and that's not more for. So, for those of you lover of vaccines, here is excellent news to come for you. So, Carter Gould, the analyst, made this comment that Pfizer over the summer said on their last earnings call that the longer term business model was as when the company would move from a pandemic to an endemic phase, and that there would be then potential for higher pricing. Now, the point to note here is that what we are currently calling a pandemic is not actually going to be a pandemic any longer, but it's actually going to move into an endemic phase, which means, drum roll, that it's going to be here to stay. And yes, so for you lover of vaccines, you're not just going to be having your one dose and call it quits. You're going to have doses of vaccines from Pfizer for the foreseeable future. And so let me quote D'Amelio on this, not to take him out of context. He says, and I quote, "So in terms of, I'll call it, the business going forward, although we're not certain, based on everything we've seen to date, we believe it's becoming increasingly likely that an annual revaccination is going to take place." And I'll repeat that, an annual revaccination is going to take place. And we believe that that's going to take place for the foreseeable future. Most likely a single dose, but that's what we see based on what we've seen to date. And not as, so we don't see this as a one-time event, but we see this as something that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. So he said it not once, but twice. And so, as I said before, all you lovers of vaccines, you're going to have this for the rest of your frigging life. On pricing. So we now talk about the transcript goes into the topic of pricing. And basically what he's saying here is that as normal market forces and normal market conditions kick in, they see that this is going to be a very significant opportunity for their vaccine from a demand perspective and from a pricing perspective, given the clinical profile of their vaccine. And I quote, "So clearly more to come here, but we think as this shifts from pandemic to endemic," here we go again, "we think that's an opportunity for us and that this is going to continue for the foreseeable future." And so Carter Gould has to ask, is this exercise to revaccinate annually, is that being driven by some of the early results that they're getting from phase 3 that was running in the fall? D'Amelio goes on to say, well, we've got so many variants, the UK variant, the South African variant, the Brazilian variant. So his answer is, and I quote, "And so there is the possibility for more variants to emerge." I think the answer is clearly there is. And guess what, guys? Because of their amazing multivalent mRNA-based platform, Pfizer is going to be developing their flu vaccines on this platform as well. And so He goes on to say, and I quote D'Amello again, the punchline on that is we think that flu represents a potentially significant opportunity for us. We want to be able to demonstrate safety and tolerability. And from the timing perspective, he thinks that they can actually get these vaccines, these new flu vaccines, out by year end, within a year. And Charles Triano, who is the VP for Investor Relations from Pfizer, goes on to add that the mRNA platform will, I quote, provide another leg of the stool, so to speak, of our vaccines research platform in terms of other applications beyond flu and beyond COVID. We haven't been specific at this point, but he says that there is definitely opportunity given that they've learned a lot through this process and that there will be additional opportunities for this platform. And apparently, they've all agreed on a previous Zoom meeting that the mRNA platform has now been validated. And so, I quote again, this really opens the door for us to look at other potential applications of the mRNA platform. So there you have it, folks. I will wrap up here. And I think what you've heard is enough for you to surmise that if you really thought that Pfizer and all of the other vaccine companies, well, I shouldn't say all because I haven't actually looked at them, but let's suffice to say Pfizer, the company, Pfizer Inc., is really looking at these vaccines as a huge growth potential and engine for the company and really not thinking about our health and safety because, as you've heard him say, they have got contract manufacturers. They're speeding up the process. It's zoom, 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 go, 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 more money, more cash to the company. And I'm not really sure at the end of the day whether or not safety is of paramount importance to this company. That's all I'm going to say. That's just my 2 cents worth at the end of this. But you heard from me, the transcript was real. I'm not making this up. This is not voodoo here. This is actually from a transcript that I've dug out from a virtual healthcare conference conducted between Barclays Research and Pfizer Inc. And there you have it, our first Right News episode. Look forward to more from me, your journalist and host, Christina Singh.